Grandma Nancy not wanting.
Well,
Was she kind of tough?
She picked out a girl that she wanted my dad to marry. And he was not very, he had it ahead of his own too, and he's a little bit determined.
Is he strong-willed?
Oh, very much.
Oh, well, we know where Ted gets it.
If you mention Naki, then you've already mentioned strong is not even the word. Uncle Albert, Uncle Aunt, my dad, oh, it was, well, they were just a little bit over the hill on that. So anyway, my grandma kept trying to get my dad to go with this girl that she wanted him to go with. And so he didn't pay very much attention to her. Of course, everybody had a nice horse then. And so horse that they rode in a nice saddle.
I love this story. I remember it.
And so she kept encouraging and telling all kinds of tales on my Grandma Richardson, Grandma Perry, and my dad wouldn't pay any attention to her. And so she told him, she said, if you will not go with Perry anymore, and if you know, this other girl, Sally or whatever her name was, says if you will not go with Perry anymore, if you'll promise that you will not go with her anymore, I will buy you a new saddle. Okay, you get the saddle. She got the saddle, and he put it on his horse, and the first place he went was to see my mom.
I love it.
Grandma Nike.
Well, what was that story you were telling a minute ago?
About
To bring in there about the reason she didn't want him to go with Carrie Richardson. She has TB. Everybody had TB, you know.
Oh,
and my mom was thin, you know, she's real thin and tall.
Well, she was just trying to find any reason.
Oh, yes.
Why didn't she want, what was the real reason?
Nobody knows. It was just more or less, I guess I want to say tradition.
She wanted to
How
find
tall?
a person for him.
Oh, sure.
how tall was your mom?
She wasn't real tall, but she's real thin. She was about,
Was she your
she's
mom?
about Diane's height, or a little bit higher.
She's about our height. We're the same height, Mother.
Hmm.
We're the same height. She's about our height, wasn't she?
Yeah, just about.
Now,
Because I remember I used to do their laundry for them. They didn't have any washer, and they just didn't have very much money.
Well, we didn't live there,
No,
Mom, very
no,
long.
but Aunt Skippy wasn't overly industrious, and so I volunteered. You know, I got a big mouth. And let's see, Jackie, you were a baby.
I was a baby, I think, Mom, because remember.
I know you were a baby, and I know that Uncle Foley.
So you must have been pregnant with Grandpa.
I must have been.
now
And I
you're
know,
talking about when your grandma Naki died.
yes, this was about the period. But I remember that Uncle Foley told Aunt Skippy, said, now, I was going to come over there that afternoon. And he says, now, I want you all to go downtown, and I want you to get, your shoes are going to be too small, your little white shoes. And I said, I want you to go get Jackie some, I had made the remarks about, I've got to go get her some new shoes. Just drop the remark. And he says, now, I want you all to go downtown and get her some new shoes. And so we went downtown, and I never will forget, and Skippy, I carried, you was great, so heavy, I carried you, and I just completely give out. And we walked apparently, and up and down these big, at that time they had these great big long stairways, a lot of the stores were upstairs. And so we come back home.
Now this was in Shelbyville?
Louisville.
They're wearing, close to wearing Helen lived there.
And we came back home, and Uncle Foley said, did you get the shoes? No, I ran out of money. Ran out of money? I gave you money to get the shoes. Well, now, Sunday when we was down to Mama's, I borrowed a bag of oranges from her, and I had to get the oranges back, and when I got the oranges, and I didn't have enough money to get the shoes. She worked him like a...
Well, tell about when Grandma Carrie, Grandma died.
You were pregnant with Brenda, and Jackie was a little baby whenever Grandma Naki died.
Mhm.
And you didn't get to go to the funeral?
I didn't know anything about it.
Uh-huh.
Like I say, Louisville was so far away.
Did she outlive, Grandpa,
And
JD.
this was Elizabeth, right?
Grandpa,
Mother, was this
Betty,
Betty?
her husband?
Albert.
Yeah, that was Betty.
A.E.,
Betty
A lot
or
of people call
Elizabeth?
him A.E.
You want to sit beside me, honey?
Did she outlive him? Did he die first?
It was his name was Albrecht.
No.
Albrecht, do you know?
Yes, right.
And he was married to Betty.
No, I believe that he died first. And
Do you know
so,
what he died of, Mother, or how old he was, or?
I think he was 82, but I'm not real sure.
Is that right? Boy,
I
that's a
believe he
long life
was.
back then for a man.
But see, I always thought this was so pitiful. See, my Aunt Louise Nackey, which is my dad's only sister, married a Pence, and they did not have any children. They said they lost a baby. And so they adopted. Elizabeth was their oldest daughter. They adopted her, and then they adopted Vern Louise. And that's all the children they ever had. And so they told all of us, they said,
Now, this is Nackey?
this is Aunt Louise Nackey.
Grandpa Gus's.
It's my dad's sister.
Sister.
Only sister. There was only one girl. I think that I'm not real sure. I think they lost a baby or two. So Elizabeth was they were so partial to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth was mean, and Vern Louise was good. She's my age, but Vern Louise was always the cast off and the hand-me-down clothes, and so Aunt Louise told Mother and everybody said, that Elizabeth was their daughter, but Vern Louise was adopted, and we all believed it. We had.
But in reality, both
They
of them
lived
were
in St.
adopted.
Louis, Missouri, and that was so far away. And when they would come in, and when they would come in once in a great while, my Aunt Louise Nackey, she's real tall. And when I was growing up, I wanted to be real small, like you always want to be like somebody. So I wanted to be real small. And every time that my mother's folks would come from Mattoon, Illinois, and so on, they'd stop by our house. And there I was, all legs and arms, and they'd say, well, Carrie, Alice is going to be as tall as Louise Nackey. And that would just break my heart, because Aunt Louise was real tall, and she wasn't that big.
Well, you may not have felt so badly now if she wasn't kind of not somebody you really liked a whole lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess you're thinking that too. We saw her so seldom. But anyway, then Vern Louise was so unhappy, and they sent her down and made her stay with Grandpap and Mama, and they lived in St. Louis.
Now, Grandpap
Nackey.
Now,
Now,
Mom,
you were I'm
was
sorry.
Mama
this
Nackey.
after you used to stay with them?
No, that was before, I think, that I stayed with them. And so Vern Louise was so upset and so wanted
Unhappy.
so much to know who her parents were. And she was mistreated. She was sexually mistreated. And of course we didn't know anything about that at the time. But anyway, then she was going through Aunt Louise's trunk, and she found Elizabeth's adoption papers.
Now, who is Aunt Louise again, Mom?
It was Grandpa Gus's.
Only sister?
It's my dad's only sister, Aunt Louise.
Was her name Julie?
It may have been Julie Louise, or it may have been Louise Julie. I'm not real sure, dear. I guess I didn't. Yeah, I think you're right.
It was his older sister?
Only sister.
And she was older.
She was the oldest.
I thought, well,
Maybe not.
I thought my
Yes.
dad was the oldest, but maybe not.
Well, no, maybe not. You're right. I mean, this looks like
Because
it's
I
written out
always
of order.
used to feel so
No.
sad.
She was born in 1884 by this. That she.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right then. She was. I guess that he was the oldest boy,
Yeah.
and I used to think that my mother was the oldest
Girl.
on my mom's side, and my dad was the oldest on my dad's side, and I used to think that they would be. You always automatically think that they would be the first ones to go. which I'm not real sure if that was the case or not, but Aunt Louise,
She
See,
died
just to-
early, didn't she?
just to show you how hard-headed and how determined that the Nackies were, she was, I believe she was dating a boy, a man, and my dad and Uncle Lot and Uncle Albert thought he was just a wonderful boy. Well, she did not marry him. She married Uncle Jack Pence, which Aunt Louise was like here and Uncle Jack was here.
She could henpeck him.
And, well, I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't their choice. They never spoke to Aunt Louise for years and years and years. But getting back to Verna Louise, then down through the years, skipping a good bit of a lot of heartache,
Carrie.
you know, on Verna Louise's part. She was the adopted daughter that they admitted that she was adopted, and she was the one that was mistreated. Then years and years later, when Uncle Jack and Aunt Louise they moved to Arizona.
Did they have an auction?
Hmm.
Did they have an auction?
No, I don't
Do you
know
remember
I don't know
someone
what
having an
happened to
auction
their-
when you were very young?
But they moved to Arizona for Uncle Jack's health because I think he had breathing problems or something. And he got, then my grandpa and my grandma got real disabled, so Aunt Louise moved back here, Aunt Louise and Uncle Jack moved back to Eastview to take care
Okay, yes.
of my grandma and Grandpa Nackey. Well, after they passed away, they stayed on at the farm, at my grandma and Grandpa Nackey's farm. But then they became disabled. And so Verna Louise came back to take care of them. And Uncle Jack was so terrible to her. He'd say,
Even
"Get
when
that."
she came back?
Huh?
Even
She
after
came back. He,
Jeez.
the change in the climate from Arizona to Kentucky, he never could, his body never could accept it. So they tried everything, and he had stomach trouble, and he just kept getting
Worse and worse.
I did not live around, but I heard about it. And so when she came back to take care of them, they said he screamed at her and called her
I guess he was trying to deal with his own guilt or something.
I guess,
Was he the one that abused her?
no, he wasn't
Well,
him.
It
It
was
my
your
grandfather.
grandfather.
It's my grandfather.
Grandpa
But see, she
Nack-
was not any blood kin, and he knew it.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Now,
that
Grandpa
may not
Nackey,
make any
which-
difference now, but
Which
it did
Nackey
then.
was, which Nackey? Which was the Grandpa Nackey who abused her?
Grandpa,
Uncle A.E. or Albert Amy,
Albert
the
Amy.
German man. But they said that he would just scream at her, and but then he died. They never could stop this bowel problem that he had from the climate from Arizona to here.
but Mom, you saw her recently.
I saw her at
Reunion or something? maybe?
no,
she
uh,
came for
no, she came to Lucille and Bud. That's Uncle Albert's oldest daughter. They had their 50th, and she and Lucille exchanged letters all their life. Aunt Claudine kind of befriended her, and when she got into a good bit of trouble. Verna Louise got into trouble with the law.
That's not surprising.
Well, I'm not surprised either, but she got in with the wrong crowd, and they stole a horse. Well, stealing a horse then, you could kill.
Yeah.
You could kill a dozen people and you could get by with it, but if you stole a horse,
Yeah.
there was no, I mean, you went straight to jail. And so anyway, she stole the horse, and this other gal that was with her, they rode the horse to Big Clifty, and they got on a train there, and I guess they hit what they call them?
We're hobos.
Hobos on the train, and but anyway, somehow or other they caught her,
didn't catch the other one, did they?
I think they did, yeah. Her name was Lily Mae Bryant. But they caught them, I'll say them, and they brought them back to Hardin County, and they were going to give them a very stiff sentence. Well, Mamonaki's nephew used to live with Grandpa Mamonaki. So the only way, and oh, he was so ugly. He was the ugliest man you ever seen. This has broke my heart. And the only way that he could take Verna Louise out of the state was to marry her.
Wasn't he quite a bit older than her?
Oh, he was, well, to me, he looked like he was 100, but I think he was something like 55 or something like that. And he married her.
And she was what, 20?
She was
20?
about 19 or 20. Oh, she was beautiful. I'll show you a picture sometime. Oh, she was a beautiful, beautiful. She later on, after she got away from him, they moved to Illinois. And he could take her out of state if he married her. And he was kidding her one day. See, I was such a naive, and I was so ignorant, I guess you think. I thought that she loved him.
Well,
you know.
Nothing else made sense.
No. And so he was teasing her one day, and then she walked out of the room, and she said to me, she said, Alice, I have tried my best to love that man. And we wrote back and forth for a good bit. And finally, she took off and left him. He had a little money, and she took off and left him.
I hope she took some of his money. I hope she took some of his money.
I don't know about that because, see, that they were living in Illinois at the time. She wrote me a letter. We exchanged letters a few times. Anyway, I thought this was so terrible. So he couldn't find her. And so finally, somehow or other, he traced her down. And he told her if she would come back to him, that he would take her back and take care of her. And when she stepped off of the train,
He had her arrested.
he had the authorities there. And they grabbed her. And she went to the pen.
Oh my goodness. Now what period of time would that have been? About 1930 or 40?
No, this would have been, let's see, Dad and I married in 37. It would have been like in 35 or thereabout, or maybe 37.
How long was she in prison, do you know?
I don't know for sure, but she came after she got out of prison.
What a sad life she had.
Oh, she had a terribly sad
Her
life.
early years were sad, but I don't think her later
But getting
years
back to the last time I saw her, she came to Bud and Lucille's 50th. Because
Who's Bud and Lucille?
Uncle
Bud and Lucille
Albert.
Nackey, that's Uncle Albert. Lucille was Uncle Albert's daughter, and she married Bud. Can't remember his last name. But they had a 50th anniversary, and she came. And I could not wait to get to see her. Oh, I was just so excited. But she was just sort of, she didn't seem to be as excited to see me as she was anybody else. And we didn't get to talk.
She was older than you.
Not very
Not
much.
much.
Maybe a couple of
year.
years. Maybe a couple of years.
Sometimes when you're younger than someone and you look up to them and you remember them.
Well,
a lot
I
of
don't
time
know.
had passed, Mother.
This,
you know?
how old were you, Mother? You would have been, how old would you have been then?
19, 18.
No,
Well,
I
when you
mean
exchange
here, whenever
letters.
you just saw her again.
Oh, it was just a couple of years ago.
No, it's been like, they had their anniversary something like 8 or 10, because see, Bud's dead. 7 or 8 years ago.
I remember you talking
And
about
she
her
is a
coming.
barber. Verna Louise is a barber. And I wanted,
She lives in
I wanted,
Florida.
Huh?
She lives in Florida.
She lives in,
Well, surely she's retired.
D.C., huh?
I mean, she'd be 70 years old at least, wouldn't she?
Well, she would now.
In,
Uh-huh.
Lives in D.C., in Washington.
I believe that's where she lives. I believe it is. And she said, she told everybody, said, now, get your hair cut, whatever you need, because I'm going to leave. You know, I'm going to be gone for a few days. So and I thought this was so terrible because, well, I think I've skipped over my stories till it's hard for you to understand. But Elizabeth, they were so partial to her. Well, Aunt Louise wrote these letters, and she said, oh, Elizabeth is getting married, and so et cetera, et cetera. Well, Elizabeth was pregnant. And so the baby came along shortly, I don't know how soon. And so she then announced the baby, and she said, oh, I sent all of you invitations to the wedding. Well, when the baby came, it was she belonged to a Dago or something. It's the awfulest looking kids you ever saw. Well, she gave the kid, Aunt Louise finally wound up with it when it was about 3 or 4 years old, or something like that. Well, then when it became 6 or 7 years old, Aunt Louise sent it to school. Well, he went to school. I don't know how long it was until Aunt Louise got real bad, and then whenever he passed away, I think Elizabeth may have come and got him. I believe she did, but she didn't want him. So anyway, then when Lucille and Bud had their 50th, I was going to tell you the kid's name. He came with Verna Louise, and he said, I want to go see, and there was a kid that he went to school with at New Union School, and he just thought so much of him, and he wanted to go see him. Verna Louise rented a car here in E-Town, and from the way she described it, she come right by my house looking for that boy. They went all around over Hardin County and Howe Valley and all looking for this boy that Joel, his name is Joel, that Joel went to school with. He wanted to see him. And I said, Verna Louise, if you had just called me, I said, I would have come and I would have picked you up, and I would have known where. They just drove all around trying to find this kid. And I said, I could have stood here in my house and got on the phone and found where the boy was, and we could have drove right to it. But anyway, another thing that hurt me, when she went back home after, well, anyway, I asked her about her husband at the, Dad went with me. We went to the, he always thought that Lucille and all of them was great because, see, he boarded with them for a while when he went to Louisville and got a job, and he didn't, and the kids and I were down here. And so then when we went to their anniversary, why, then when she went back home, when she went back to D.C., she wrote to Aunt Pauline.
Tell us a little bit about when you were living with Grandpa Natty and Grandma Natty.
Well, my grandma, through the winter months when it was bad and you couldn't get out, she sewed quilts.
Did she hand sew them, or machine?
Oh, she hand sewed them.
Were these like braided? Oh no, quilts.
Quilts. And she made some of the, see, Aunt Louise had access where she lived there. Somehow there was a factory where they made clothing, and Aunt Louise got the scraps real cheap, and then she would mail them to my grandma. And my grandma would sit and sew and sew and sew. And then she would give me the little scraps, and then she taught me how to sew and make a quilt. And this is kind of crude, but it was funny. Grandpa had a big bunion on the bottom of his foot, and if he put his weight on it, of course it hurt real bad. So he crippled, he
Hobbled around a lot.
Hobbled around a lot. And so he had a great big old wicker chair that sat in the back of the corner. And he had pillows and feather pillows, and he just had his bed there, and nobody touched it. I mean, it just fit his body. And
he was a big man, wasn't he, Mom?
He was a great big man. And so
was he tall and heavy as well?
he was tall and very heavy. I'll show you his picture. And Mama, the floor was kind of, rickety, and I guess, well, it wasn't rickety, but he was so heavy that he would shake the floor when he walked across it. And so my mama sat way over here, and she worked on the quilt pieces, and she yelled at him a good bit, and because he just sit and smoked his pipe and read his newspaper. Oh, he took the Courier Journal, and he read every bit, and he'd read to us, well, they'll be damned about you to hear this, Betty.
Now this is Grandpap Nacky.
Yeah,
and
this is
and
Grandpap Nacky,
this
so
is,
anyway.
what's his name, Gus?
No, A.E. Albert Amiel Rudolph.
Oh, Rudolph? There's a
Rudolph. Albert Amiel. See, James'
Hi,
name
that's
is
you.
James Rudolph.
Hi. Kids and Julie.
Doris.
Laura. Yeah, and Selma and Julie. Oh, okay, hang on.
Shirley.
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 Push the weight back.
Jackie.
Push it again.
Story where we were on a minute ago. It was a good one.
We want to
Oh,
finish
yeah, it
up.
was a good one.
We want to finish up that story.
Okay, is it alright if we wait till she
Yeah,
comes back? So she
let's
can
go
get-
ahead and
No,
start.
she'll get mad at us.
She's gonna take.
Okay. Anyway, my grandpa, he sat in that corner of the living room with the wood stove right
Yeah,
here,
right,
and then
corner
my
too.
grandma was over here in the middle of the floor, working on her quilt pieces, and he had a little table. It wasn't exactly a desk, but it was all the way on the other side of the house. And so he wanted to go across the room and get his pipe and his newspaper, but he knew if he walked across the room, it shook the floor so bad that my grandma would say,
Yeah.
"Mr. Nacky,
She called
I
him Mr.
wish you would sit down." And so sometimes her tone of voice was a little
She
more
called him
harsh
Mr.
than
Nacky.
that, right? And so he thought if he could do her a favor, that she wouldn't fuss at him. So he kept oranges and he got prunes for the big boxes, and he kept oranges and apples, and but they were on the other side of the room, and so he would say, "Betty, do you want an apple?" No, Mr. Nucky."
Well, tell a little
But
bit how about
he
horse
just-
trading got stuff.
But he'd just do that so that.
So he could get up and go across and get his newspaper
get one,
and his
yeah.
pipe.
Uh-huh.
And so he'd sit there a while and he'd say, "Well, Betty, do you want an orange?" "No, Mr. Nike, I don't want an orange." So he'd sit there a while and he had a right smart temper. "Well, damn it to hell, I have got to have my pipe." You want me to tell you about whenever
The insurance.
the insurance? Charlie Carter and Earl Templeman sold insurance, and they also were president and vice president of the city bank. And so Charlie told me this story. Said that Grandpap come by the bank one day and said, "We've had a big fire," and said, "I want you to come down and take the inventory of what we lost, and I want to turn it into the insurance company." So Charlie said, "All right." So he went down there and said, Grandpap, he got his pen and pencil out and said, Grandpap said, "Oh yes, we had a terrible big fire." Said, "We lost big round table," and he enumerated what all they lost, and said, he said something about Betty, and she says, "Well, Mr. Nack, you know we didn't have a fire." And he said, "Well, damn it, Betty, but you keep your mouth shut. I am telling this."
Charlie Carter told you this story?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the truth.
Oh, that's funny.
But my dad and his mom and dad didn't get along very well, and neither did Uncle Albert. And, you know, they lived in Louisville, but they didn't get along. And see,
Well, he didn't get along with any of them then, I guess.
With
Uh,
his
Grandpa.
parents, me.
but I thought this was another thing. It's so funny when I stayed with them. The Barneses, you know, they lived between. We lived here, and then the Barneses lived here, and then Grandpap lived back this little lane right
No,
here,
you're not
and it
talking
was
about,
all in one
you're
little.
not talking about S.C. Barnes.
No. These is another set of Barneses.
Get a shot of your mother now.
Well, it's gonna get better. Stop it.
Oh, you mean that our relatives were?
No,
No.
I'm undressing.
Oh, I see. So anyway, Hollis Barnes, that was the oldest boy. It wasn't anything unusual for people to make liquor and sell it, and they get a little money that way.
Now, what period of time are we talking about here, Mother?
We're
1930s?
talking about like in 28 or 29 or something like that. And so they caught Hollis, and they took him in, and they confiscated the still, and they took him to jail and everything. And see, Edward, his brother, would help do the chores at the barn for Grandpap. He hired everything done.
Grandpap did.
You could work all day for a dime then.
Because he was kind of lazy.
Yeah, and he didn't like to farm, and he didn't like to. Now he took the census. You know, he hired Edward to drive him all around over Hardin County. He took census, made good money.
Which, he took census in Hardin County? Grandpap took census in Hardin County?
Grandpap Nackey, and that's
Grandpap Nackey took the census in Hardin County.
Albert Nackey, Albert Augustus, Emil, what's his name?
A.E.
Albert Amiel is what he went by, but everybody called him Uncle A.E.
And this is like in 1930?
This was like about in
28, 29.
Yeah.
Well, the census comes out every 10 years on the like 1920, 1930. Okay. 1920 census just came out.
Okay.
It comes out every 80 years. They'll release them to the public. So we could go through and we could see where he wrote. Yeah.
That would be handy. How'd you know all this?
This is through her.
I know. Just
So anyway, they caught Hollis making liquor.
A man
And,
has to make a living.
That was,
A man has to make a living.
well, bootlegging is what we used to call then. So I remember Hollis used to pace the house, and he had a sedan with a rumble seat. Oh man, he kept that thing polished up. And of course, he was a lot older than me. I didn't have eyes on him because he was Aunt Pauline's age. So anyway, then
Was there a Burns you should have had eyes on? Was there a Burns you should have had?
oh no, we didn't. You don't like the boys that you grew up with. You want someone that lives farther away.
In a minute, you're going to have to tell us about how you met Dad. So.
So anyway, so then Uncle Albert. This was like in the Depression, 29.
Yeah, Uncle Albert.
Uncle Albert Nackey, Grandpap Nackey's son, my dad's brother. So he took a hitch in Louisville, and he made it upstairs.
What does that mean? Took a hitch?
He made liquor upstairs. Uncle Albert. But you didn't get the good part. She was stripped off there at one time. I saw a man peeping in the window.
No, I thought that was a woman.
Yeah, wait a minute, Mother. What, he made a hitch. What, now say that again. What does that mean? What does that mean? He made a hitch in Louisville? Does that mean that he made a run to Louisville with moonshine or something?
No, he was making it upstairs.
He made liquor upstairs. He made liquor upstairs, and so he bootlegged it. Uncle Albert did. He told the law that he could not get a job. That was when you couldn't get a job anyplace. And he had a big family. And this may be true. I think it's all true.
I'm sure it's true.
But it was against the law. And they didn't condone that. I mean, they did condone it. I mean, they took, anyway. So it come out in the Courier Journal, you know, that they had caught Albert Nackey at 2427 Duncan Street making liquor. And
Is that really where they lived? Is that really where they lived?
Yeah, 2427 Duncan. That's where they lived.
Memory.
Lord, I never will forget it. So anyway, Edward come in that afternoon to do the work for Grandpap, and Edward said, "Well, them Barneses, they didn't care for nothing." He said, "Well, I saw where they caught Albert." Well, Grandpap, man, oh man, he jumped up, and he's had a terrible temper. Yes, and damn it to hell, they caught not Rufus, but
Rudolph?
Hollis.
Oh.
They caught Hollis too, didn't they?
It made it all right that they caught Hollis.
Well, yeah, but see, it made
Tit for tat.
yeah, Grandpap. Oh, he didn't like it because that Edward come in and just announced it because he saw it in the paper too. So.
But we want you to tell us about you and Daddy, how you met Daddy.
Well, before you do that, I want you to go back and talk about the Richardsons and the Nackies and how different they were.
Oh,
The-
okay.
Going in.
We're
and
talking about the man and the woman, both,
no,
or
you were just talking before about, you know, when you'd go to
family
your
traits?
Grandma Nackies and what it was like there and how, you know, she liked to work outside and all that, and then your Grandma Richardson and how her house was and everything. Can you talk about that?
Well, my grandpa Nacky, he did love to go to auctions, and he always came home with, well, Lord, I remember round tables and glass doored safes and ice boxes and everything that my grandma Nacky had, and it was right funny. She didn't care, you know, as long as she had, and so she just lined she just lined them up around in the kitchen, and there was a great big long table set right in the middle, and she never took she'd leave her molasses and her cream and sugar, and or not her cream, but her sugar, and everything set on the table, and then she'd just spread a little cloth over it, and it was there then for the next meal. And so then in lying about, and in her parlor, us kids wasn't very, unless we snuck in there, and it was wall to wall in there.
You weren't allowed.
We were not allowed, and it was wall to wall in there, and she had organ in there, but we were, and she had, oh my Lord, she had a settee, and it had that horsehair on it, and we'd go in and sit down, and of course our dress come way up here, and it would, that horsehair would just, well, it's like a needle sticking you.
Like steel wool.
Yeah, and all she had bowling pictures, yeah, and she had marble type dressers, and she had a great big high headboard bed, and me and Aunt Pauline used to go down there and spend the night, and she had army all wool blankets next to you. And boy, as soon as we got in that bed, we'd take our feet and we'd push them blankets down because they itched you so bad. And my mom, well, I guess that she liked Mamonaki as well as anybody could like her as a mother-in-law, and as they, you know, they, as I said, they didn't get along too well.
And considering the fact that Grandma Nacky didn't want
They didn't want
Grandpa
my dad.
Nacky to marry Carrie in the first place.
No. So Mother always said that she, that Mamonaki would do one thing. That she made quilts, and she made quilts, and she had hundreds. She had stacks of them, but she did not quilt them. She pieced them, and she got the lining, and she got the batting, and she took them to this Miss Rosie Peters or someone, and she kept her quilting around the whole year.
Well, then would she sell the quilts?
No.
I thought she sold some of them, Mom.
Well, what'd she do with all those quilts?
She stacked them in that parlor room and used rags. But let me tell you the cute part about it. See, Grandpap went back to Germany 7 times on the plane. And I got a picture of him when he's got all of his helmet on and all of his gears getting ready to go back to Germany.
Where'd you get all these pictures? I've never seen any of these pictures. No.
Anyway, so Grandpap went back there one time to see his uncles, and
Did he take a quilt?
and he took a quilt, but he, unbeknownst, my grandmother,
Sneaked a quilt.
brother, he snuck that out probably the night before, and then somebody took him to Eastview to catch the train, and then he went from Louisville
Betty,
to
would
catch
you
the
like
plane.
an orange?
And so, his, occasionally, quite every now and then, he got a letter from Germany. So he got a letter from Germany after he'd been home a while. Of course, it took days.
Now this was the one that was a real wheeler dealer.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was my
kind of lazy.
awful lazy.
But
Terribly
Grandma
lazy.
Nacky was very industrious.
Oh yes.
She had to be busy all the
Oh
time.
yes, and Mamonaki
And she was
had,
the one that was the Woolrich before?
no,
No.
she was a N-O-E.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And she had her little change purse, and she
And
had
what was
her
her
money.
name? What was her name?
Betty, they said Betty
Julia.
No, that was Julie
Julie
Louise.
Oh,
Was
I'm sorry,
Gus's
I'm sorry.
oldest sister. This was
there
my
another name
grandma's
for
neck-
Elizabeth?
Nacky's
her name was Elizabeth or Betty.
Elizabeth.
Was there a
Elizabeth.
second name?
No.
My grandma Richardson's name was Elizabeth. Was Minnie Ann, and my grandma Nacky's name was.
All it shows in the census is
Elizabeth?
Betty, but
Huh?
all it shows in the census is Betty.
Betty.
Well,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, that would be Betty.
Elizabeth.
Betty
no.
is short for Elizabeth.
Right.
Elizabeth, no.
But anyway, back to the letter. So, Grandpap's niece wrote back and said, or his nephew wrote back that he went to visit, and he said, you certainly made a hit with my niece when you brought her the new quilt from Kentucky.
Woo! 7 times he went back.
And the pioneers.
7
And so-
times he went back.
And
But
so,
see, he was
what did
he
she
was
do with all
deputy
the
sheriff at
quilts?
Fort. They called it Camp Knox when he come down here.
He was deputy sheriff at
Oh, but I started to tell you a while ago. What was you going to ask me?
What did she do with all the quilts that she kept stacking up in that
Well,
wardrobe?
They burned.
Their house burned. It did after Grandpa told the big story about the fire. It did burn. I was pretty well grown. I was about 15 or 16.
But now, what made you go and live with them?
They told me they would pay me $1.50, I think it was, a week, and then I was anxious to earn the money. And Mother said
And
I
how
could go.
old would you have been?
13.
I think I was about, let's see, that was after my dad died, and I was about 11 or 12, or maybe 13.
And so you had to work very hard for them.
I didn't work that hard. It wasn't the hard work that I
unpleasant
despised
to
so
be
much. It was the confinement and the fact that my brothers and sisters was all at home and I was down there, and they were it was so lonesome. Oh, it was so lonesome. And now
So what
I
kinds
loved
of things did you do for them, Mother?
what things did I do for them? Well, Uncle Albert always teased me. And he always liked to tell these tales he told tales on Aunt Dorothy. Aunt Dorothy there was a boy at school that she just couldn't stand. And so he'd tell these tales, and he told these tales on me, and he said that I had to carry in the kindling and carry in the wood, and said that Grandpaps said, that trifling young one, she will not do anything, and I tell her to get in the small wood.
So
he
he
liked
can
to tell
lift it.
that on me, and I guess I carried in, and oh yeah, no, I carried the water in.
Did you do any of the cooking, Mother?
No, my grandmother, and my grandmother. It was the funniest things you can remember. She had a great big cook stove, and she kept a pan of water on it all the time. And as each one would get through eating, well, she would take their dish right then, just at one at a time, whoever got done. And she'd take the dish one at a time, and she'd wash it. And she had, isn't that funny how you can remember little silly things? She had her dish rag. She could take it like that, and just
Her grip was so good.
just squeeze it in her hand. Yeah, and by the time we all got through eating, she had the dishes all washed.
Well, now, she was very, always stayed busy, and what was she like? She made quilts, and
She made quilts, and she had loom. She had loom, and she wove rugs, and she'd sit out there on that.
flowers.
And she made flowers. Aunt Louise kept her going a whole lot. Aunt Louise sent her quilt pieces all the time from St. Louis, Missouri, and she sent her crepe paper and the wire and she made flowers, and she had a big box. It was about this wide, and it was longer than from here to the stove, and she kept it in under the parlor bed. She pushed it in under there, and then it had everything in there. Great big long box, had all of her things that she made flowers out of, and she'd make flowers, and she'd weave rugs, and that's what Mother always said.
and then would she sell that stuff?
She gave the rugs sometimes to Aunt Eula. She gave her enough to cover her floor. That they, how they make carpets and sewed them together. And Aunt Eula lived away from here, and
Now,
she
Mom,
didn't know as much
Aunt
about
Eula was
Uncle Ott's wife.
Okay.
And Aunt Eula was a
Dupin.
Now, Mom, what do you remember about their church life? Did they go to church, or did they, were there churches?
Not very much.
Not too much.
What religion would they have been?
I think Presbyterian. Grandpa did not go at all. But Mama went occasionally.
No Lutheran or anything like that.
Hmm.
The Lutheran church was not.
Mhm. She could walk up to the Fairfield Church where my mom and dad's buried, and where her and Grandpa's buried. But they didn't have church but once a month, and I can't recall that she went a whole lot.
Well, now, Grandma, she would make you go. She wouldn't make you go, but she really liked flowers, and you all would go out and.
Yes, she had a right pretty yard. Of course, it grew up. You didn't have any mowers to cut it with, but I never will forget her tulip bed, and they come up every year. Just beautiful. And I thought, oh, if we could just have a tulip bed, they was so.
Well, where would
pretty.
she have gotten those tulips? Did she? The
Sure,
bulbs?
Grandpap got him.
When
Yeah.
he went to Germany?
No,
No.
traded for
He
him.
he picked them up, I guess, in town when he went to town. But another thing that Grandpap done, and he just, when he was taking the census, somewhere someone made baskets, and he got them from that size to bushel baskets this size, and he gave them to they were well made. I'm sure some of the baskets that I have were probably made then. This whole lot of them just laid out and, was rotted and so. And he brought all of us baskets, and he brought the little tiny ones and the itsy bitsy ones,
Honey.
and bigger ones, and round ones, and square ones, and short ones, and he bought baskets and he could not keep a dime in his pocket. If he had $1, and like I say, they had separate purses, and he'd say, Becky, I wonder if you would lend me $2. I need to get. Brother, he paid it back.
I bet she saw that.
Well, now she would sell her things to make money. She sell.
She would sell blackberries. She would hull walnuts and sell
Eggs,
walnuts. She would sell her eggs and her cream. I told you about the separator this evening, didn't I? Did you hear me tell about the separator? Amy Ellen said that's the funniest thing. I was telling Sharon, I guess, and Jackie this evening. My grandma Nike, you couldn't tell her anything. I know. And so they bought a new separator, cream separator. You never did see one, but it had a great big.
Oh, I saw one.
Sure.
In your cream parlor. I mean,
Yeah.
in your milk parlor.
Had a great big bowl here. You poured the milk in, and then the spouts that came out here, and the cream out of one, and the Blue John out of the other, and they bought a new one. And Aunt Helen was helping. She was helping. Happened to be there that day, and they put it all together, and they couldn't wait to pour the milk in to separate to see how it was going to work. And it had what they call a disc. And I believe there's 20 of them, and they were stacked, and they had to be exactly. They were numbered, and when you washed them, you had to put them back. If you got one out of place, then it would not work. Milk would run out everywhere. So they put the new separator together, and Helen said, "Mama, I think this, honey, I know how to put it together. I know."
Now she wasn't German.
No. And but she said she was white-headed at 19. Her hair got gray real early. And so Aunt Helen said, "Yes, but Mama, I know, honey. Now you just get over there and crank it." Get over there and crank that thing. We'll get this thing going. So he then poured the milk on it and had a little spigot, and you turned it on, and the milk come down in there, and then it was, as you cranked it, it was supposed to run out them spouts. Well, Aunt Helen said that there was little holes all around, and said the milk was ready. Mabel said, "Well, that's all right now." And she'd stick her finger in these little holes. And the milk was just running everywhere. So I guess really and truly, when you talk about determination and hard-headed and everything, that actually we got it from both sides. I mean, both Grandpap and Mama.
Well, now, what did they call you?
Cooter.
And what they say
I
about you?
don't know why. She called a lot of people Cooter, but she always called me Cooter. Let's go hunt lady slippers today.
And she put the lady slippers in her yard.
Yeah. Your Uncle Foley. Grandpap. Grandpap was such a trader. He traded all the time. He traded horses. And he traded everything. So he'd come in with an old stack of bones.
An old horse.
Yeah, and so had a great big knoll.
Hey, great big what?
Great big knoll back over. So some of them would live till morning. He had a graveyard back there. Val, take him back there and shoot him. And then Uncle Foley told me, said that they made a bunch of sorghum one time. And Grandpap was going to peddle it out. They wouldn't peddle it out. There wasn't anything unusual about somebody coming by your house selling sorghum, or maybe they had butchered a cow and they'd be selling beef. So they said Grandpap loaded up. They put them in gallon buckets and half-gallon buckets. They said Grandpap loaded up 15 or 20 of them. He's going to go down. So he just got in the wagon after somebody hitched up the team and got it all set up, because he didn't know diddly squat about hitching up a team. So he went down the road. He went down the road with them molasses in the back of his road wagon, and so the tailgate fell out. And so he joggled along and said when he got there, he didn't have a bucket left in there in the road wagon. You know, it had bounced along, and after the tailgate come out, well, he strung them buckets of sorghum all up and down the road. But Uncle Foley tells about him taking them horses. Oh, he had a graveyard back there that, but it's the funniest thing.
Of the horses. He had a graveyard of
Where he
horses.
take one, but yeah, Val, you just take this vine back there and you shoot him. But it's the funniest thing when Brenda was born. You know, the doctor, of course, she's born at home, and the doctor would always try to get your mind off on something else. And so he said, well, what was your maiden name? And I told him. He said, so he wrote it down. He said, see, everybody knew Grandpap. They knew him from Eastview to Stevensburg to on into E-Town and everything. And said, did you? I knew an old German fella one time, said he was a horse trader. And would you know his knacky? Would you know who he was?
You ready to admit they're not, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I traded horses with him one time, and he beat the socks off of me. That was when Brenda was born.
That would have been like in Louisville.
Was Dr. Bale or Dr. Bradley?
I was going to say, would that have been?
Bale.
No, see,
Oh, Louis.
no, see, Brenda's born in Louisville, and that was.
So he traded you even in Louisville?
Well, no, the man at that time lived somewhere around Hardin County. You see. And
Before we went out tape, I want you to tell me about you and Daddy. You
okay.
and Daddy meeting. Remember?
But before, can you talk just a little bit about the Richardsons?
About the Richardsons.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
you can
so
do that after you talk about you and Daddy. Tell
Oh,
about you and
okay.
Daddy.
I just don't want to make sure. I want to make sure we don't.
Looks
run
to
out
me
of
that we're only halfway through.
tape. Oh, are we? Okay. Okay.
Gonna have to hurry.
No,
No,
we're okay.
Just till you fall asleep.
Yeah, that's what I.
Would you like something to drink, Mother, before we
How about a piece of fudge, Mother, before
No, I
I
don't
eat
want
it all?
any fudge.
You want something?
No,
to
Becky, I do not want any.
No, you want some of that Fresca?
I don't want anything. If I drink any
Yeah,
Fresca, I'll sit on my pot all night.
Did you get that, Jill?
It was God.
Each of us got.
Did you cut it off during that one little sentence?
No, and I laugh and it jiggles and I.
Well,
You want me to do it while Jill?
See-
Is your hand getting tired?
If you want to.
No, it's fine unless your hand.
See, there was a little
I hope
place
I'm not
over
jiggling
here,
too much.
right along about where
Let me know.
Langley's,
Martin box.
yeah, the hilltop. I think they call it
I've
hilltop.
never understood where that is.
Just right down from the cemetery.
Okay,
Yeah.
on 62.
Yeah, on 62. But there was a place there called the Martin Box, and that was a hangout.
Oh, I know it.
Is that where that Anderson Marine or something is now?
Yes, it's where it was.
That Marine
Yeah,
place?
right along
Right
where
behind
that
it.
Marine is. So all of us conjourned up there on the weekends. They had a little old jukebox,
They
they
had
sold
what?
A jukebox.
a jukebox, and you get out there and jump up and down all night.
Did you go with Uncle Foley, or did you go with, who did you go with?
Well, sometimes that Delta May and Uncle Arvel and them would have a car. I guess, I don't know who I went with. But Ida and Nina and Dad and Jewel.
Aunt Jewel would have been too young.
Huh?
Aunt Jewel would have been too
No,
young.
Aunt Jewel's just,
It's only
there's
a
just a
couple
year
of
and a half
years.
difference in Aunt Jewel and me.
Really?
And then there's
Really?
2 years difference in Nina and me. And so we'd all go up to Martin Box because there's where the, what do they call it, the cruising was done. And
In 1935.
That what year would that have been?
let's see, we married in 38, didn't we?
Yeah.
37.
We married in 38. So that would have been,
1935, 36.
no. We didn't date that long. That would have been,
37?
I'm trying to think when we started, I'm trying to think what month it was when we started dating. I guess it was in the summer months. And boy, mother thought sun raised and setting, Dad. And so anyway, I can't remember if he asked me for a date, but Aunt Ida did not want him to go with me. She had a
Had
gal
somebody in
picked
mind.
out that she wanted him to go with. So I never will forget. Dad said it's after we were dating a while, and he said, "Now, I was always so bashful. Oh, I was so bashful. Shy, talk to people or anything." So he said, now Mom wants you to come up and eat supper with us tonight.
I wanted to check you out.
Well, I went. I told him I wasn't hungry.
I bet you were starving to death.
I was. Dad had to go get me something to eat. My stomach got hurting so bad.
What, now,
Dad,
Now, I
your
don't
dad
know
or
why I
Dad
wouldn't
Pop?
I don't know
You
why I
were
wouldn't.
probably too nervous.
Just
I
shy.
was embarrassed,
Just shy.
just shy. I was.
Well, I mean, for heaven's
But
sake,
wasn't that
9 of them
terrible?
around.
I mean, I knew that I was going.
You
She
went-
knew I was coming.
You went for dinner.
It was in the evening.
You
We
went for dinner,
and-
but you weren't hungry.
but I wasn't hungry.
Sounds
they all
like
just-
Alice to me.
And they all just begged me to eat.
Now, did he come pick you
And of
up,
course, you know,
or
if I want to say no, you know, they can't nothing.
When
no-
you said no, you
no
can't go back.
No persuasion. Well, a lot of people would say, "Well, I don't care if I do. I'm kind of hungry." Or, you know, you could.
Well, I did come for dinner.
now, Mom? Did he come pick you up, or did
He did come
someone?
and pick me up.
He did.
In what?
And
In the big long truck.
Papa's work truck?
Yeah, his work truck.
and you didn't have to be chaperoned to go over.
No,
You didn't have to double date or anything?
no.
how
But
Where did that idea come from?
Let-
then?
how old would you have been, Mother?
Let Mother
How
tell.
old was I then? Well, let's see. I was 17 when I got married. So
Were
I
you
was
still living with your grandparents?
with my mother. No, I didn't
Oh.
live with my grandmother then. I was, no, I didn't live with my grandmother until, for, I guess I was about 12 or maybe 13. I don't recall living with my grandmother after my dad died. I don't know who they got. They hired girls by the dozens to come.
Now, how old were you when you met Daddy? Would you have been about 16?
Well, let's see. We got married in in November, and I was 17, I think, in June, and Dad was 19.
That was 1938.
Wait a minute, I've
November
told this wrong.
1938.
I was 18, and Dad was 21. See, Dad was almost 3 years older than me.
Well,
But
how did
I got
Aunt Nina and Aunt Nina and them feel about?
about us getting married. I really don't guess I quite know how they felt. They were pretty good at hiding their feelings. There was another girl that Dad had taken out, and they kind of wanted him to
Who
go.
was she?
Her name was Brewer, I think. Ida Mae Brewer or something like that. And
Like from the Chevrolet family? Brewer Chevrolet family?
yeah, I guess. I'm not real sure. But one night I got mad at Dad, and so he just kept aggravating me, and so I just jumped out of the truck, and we was about 2 miles from home, from my house. And I jumped out of the truck, and I started walking, and he pulled up the truck, and he said, "You get in here," and I said, "No, I'm not going to do it." And so he just kept on, and he said, now I went down and got you, and I told your mother that I would bring you home. Now you get in here. So I finally got in, and we never said a word from there on down to the house. And I jumped out of the truck, and I said, thanks for bringing me home, and good night. And so, I was real, you know, after the next day, I was real blue, and I told my friends that, well, we broke up. Ah, that's terrible. Yeah, it's bad. And so I went down to Aunt Tabitha's. She just lived down there a little ways, because it was
Miller's.
Miller's. And I went down there, and I knew that he was never going to come back. We done fell out, and he got mad, and I got mad, and so that is all over. So he come down to the house. It was on Sunday afternoon, and he come down to the house, and I wasn't there, and I guess whoever, James or Foley or some of them know James was married, and they told him where I was, and he come on down there. And of course I was tickled to see him, but I don't guess I let on. I made out like I still mad.
Tell about Daddy tells a story. I heard Daddy tell a story about he didn't think you'd marry him. He's afraid.
When he come after me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I sounded like I was awful high-tempered, but I really wasn't that much. But see, last time I'd seen him was on Sunday night, and he said we was gonna get married the next Saturday, and he said, now I will make contact with you. Of course, we didn't have phones. We had one, but they didn't. We had telephone. That was the only luxury that we had. And so he said that I will be getting in touch with you sometime about the middle of the week, and we'll finalize our plans. And so Wednesday come, I didn't hear from him. Thursday come, I didn't hear from him. Friday come, I didn't hear anything from him. So I just thought I'd been jilted. And so he just rolled in about 1 o'clock on Saturday, and I just sitting there in my rags. And he come in, and so he said, I told what a terrible plight he'd had, and what a terrible time he'd had. He was trying to get the money to get married. And he said, somebody, your mother or somebody said, get ready. And I said, no. I said, I'm not. And of course, I guess I was scared to death that they wouldn't. I guess I wanted them to beg me. So sat around there for a while. And didn't make much progress, and so Grandmother thought so much of Dad, and she says, well, Raymond, I just want you to know this, that if she's changed her mind, I didn't have anything to do with it.
It's all her.
So I guess that he started begging me. I'm not real sure. But see, I had to get up and get my wedding dress on and my gear on and everything.
Well, now, what was your wedding dress, Mother? Was that just a Sunday dress that you'd wear to church?
Oh, it was awful pretty.
Mom, what did you do with that?
I don't know.
And where did you get it? How did you
My mom ordered it from, I don't know, Sears Roebuck or somewhere. It was blue. It wasn't a navy blue, but it was
kind of blue.
and it was silk. It was heavy.
We used
It's
to play
crepe.
dress up in
It's
it.
crepe.
We played dress up in it when we were little.
And it had
A
an artificial a flower of blue and white that was right here.
I remember.
Well, Mother,
And
It was kind of a Wedgwood blue, actually.
go ahead.
and it was, and Mother had bought me my first long coat, I think, new long coat I ever had. And it came out, it's kind of fuchsia.
Where in the
How
world
could-
did grandmother get the money
I was
for
gonna say,
that?
how
I don't
could
know,
she
but I think she
afford
gets
it?
$17 for it. She ordered it.
Oh,
Huh?
my goodness,
That was
that's
not
a
a
lot
small
of
amount of
money
money
back
back
then.
then.
Oh yeah. What'd you say,
I was
Darling?
gonna say, how did you all make a living? Because with Grandpa died and Grandma
Well,
died,
Mother had cows and she had sheep, and she sold calves, you know, from the cows. She sold eggs, and never sold any garden vegetables or anything like that.
so she was very industrious also.
She was very industrious. See, my dad, when he passed away, he was such a poor manager, and I'm not going to say for sure, but I think he left $3,000 insurance policy.
But didn't her family have? It sounded like her mom and dad had money.
They did not. They eked out a living, but they just had an old farm.
But you talked about her always having money in her purse, or not really, and paying to have servants or
not very much.
Not very
I mean,
much.
you know, a couple of
Not
dollars
enough
would have been a whole
standard.
lot of money back then.
yeah.
And
Not anything given away.
So that was the Nackies she was talking about anyway, Jill. That wasn't the Richardsons.
Oh, that's true.
my
I'm
grandma
sorry.
Mackie that had the
Okay.
little change
I'm
purse.
sure they certainly wouldn't have given any money to Grandma.
Hmm.
I'm sure they wouldn't have given any money to Grandma.
Grandma wouldn't,
Oh
especially.
no! Oh no!
Well, Mother,
Well,
I
that
want
was
you to
right.
tell, if you can remember, Daddy told me the story about all the trouble that he had getting.
Yeah,
getting.
he went over to Indiana to get some coal to sell the coal to people. See, it was in November, and it was
To get money to get married.
yeah. He was going to sell a load of coal, but he got hung up, and he couldn't get out, and he had to hire somebody to pull him out. And then I don't know what all happened because I wasn't there to remember it. But I do remember this, that he come by what they called, it's over here at a gas station. It was right in front, right across the street from the Catholic church. There was a gas station there where he bought gas all the time. So he came by in the truck and he's all dressed up. And this a boy that worked the gas